Welcome to Hogwarts Hangout, the YouTube show where we muggles huddle, toil and muddle our way through a variety of Harry Potter discussions. I'm Reese and I'm probably really easy to hack because all of my passwords are Harry Potter related.
And I'm Annie, and I'm not so easy to hack, but all of my usernames are Annie Magus.
Oh, that's a good one. I wish mine lent itself to that.
As two members of the editorial team, and more importantly, two bona fide Wizarding World experts, we want to geek out with you on everything Potter, unpacking our favourite storylines from the series. This week, we're thinking about some of our most favourite characters, the Marauders.
Yep, a big subject. Apart from you, Peter Pettigrew, though, you can go away.
This ragtag gang of Hogwarts best friends were integral to the Harry Potter stories, creating the Marauders map, mastering animagi at a young age.
And of course, making Harry Potter actually exist. Thanks for that, James.
And we mustn't forget Lily. But what is it about the Marauders that makes them so special? How did they even become friends? And how on earth did Peter Pettigrew manage to get in with the rest of the crew?
First, here's a potted history, and fair warning, this will contain spoilers. If you don't know the stories, you should turn back now.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning, when 4 young wizards went to Hogwarts, where they were sorted into Gryffindor.
Though whether they should have all been in Gryffindor is a different question entirely.
Indeed, but these 4 friends would all take on an important role in the wizarding world, and became known as the Marauders.
And they were possibly the most mischievous quartet to ever attend Hogwarts. They were James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew.
James and Sirius were the first to become friends. They met on the Hogwarts Express and instantly liked one another.
Kind of makes you think of another Potter who met his best friend on the very same train.
Yep, history does have a way of repeating itself.
I'm Ron, by the way. Ron Weasley. I'm Harry Potter.
Remus was next to join this ragtag group of friends. One thing about Lupin, he loved an underdog and couldn't help but befriend them.
Remus? Sirius? My old friend!
I think, though, that this is one instance where Remus's kindness let him down. If only he'd been a bit more hard-hearted, Pettigrew might not have become their friend, and that would have changed things.
Yep, but unfortunately he did, and the 4 of them were inseparable during their time at school. Now that's an interesting time in their history.
Yeah, depending on who you asked, they were either the heroes or the villains.
Yep, absolutely. James was a Quidditch champion, Sirius Black was the Black who had managed to escape the dark past of his family, and Remus was highly intelligent and the conscience of the group, most of the time. And Peter, well...
Let's just say Peter was also there.
I think that's all we can say, really.
Agreed. However, they did have a dark side. The 4 of them, led by James and Sirius, relentlessly tormented a young Severus Snape. For a start, they called him Snivelus and publicly humiliated him by hanging him upside down and exposing his underwear to his fellow students.
Who wants to see me take off Snivelly's trousers?
I don't know how anyone could defend that, really. Snape never forgot the humiliation. It was like a festering wound that poisoned so much of his life.
Like his treatment of Harry, which I won't defend. Yet you can see how the pain he felt caused him to lash out at James's son.
It does make you wonder, though, James and Lily, how did they ever get together? Snape was her friend, and she was clearly no fan of her fellow Gryffindors.
Yeah, especially as they were arrogant and cruel to someone that she cared about. Though these were the Marauders as teenagers, ones prone to mistakes and immaturity, their greatness would come later.
Okay, now you've mentioned something that always bothers me about the Marauders. You say about their immaturity and the mistakes they made, but I just feel like it's an excuse. We always talk about their age and that they were teenagers, but you know, like Harry was this same age while he was like saving the world, you know, like in Order of the Phoenix, when he literally reminded Sirius and Lupin of that. He was like, I'm 15 and I'm not, you know, hanging people upside down and exposing their underwear. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I can't forgive them. Could you be friends with these people?
Yeah, I don't think I could be friends with the teenage James and Sirius in particular. I don't think I'd even have time for Lupin because, you know, he kind of didn't stop them either. He didn't act as the conscience that people say that he was. But again, I mean, them at school and them when they're older are two almost completely different people. They grow from being these immature bully boys to these kind of heroes that did a lot to save the wizarding world. And if it wasn't for them, you know, we wouldn't have Harry Potter and the story wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, I mean, but like these things have lasting actions. I always think, like, what if Snape never became a Death Eater? What if it was all because he was bullied at school and it just set him down this dangerous path? Like, so obviously they redeemed themselves later, but maybe the damage was done.
Yeah, but I think with Snape, that's really interesting because I think he would have always been a Death Eater. Yeah, I don't think the bullying helped, and there was no excuse for how they treated him, and then there was no excuse for how Snape then repeated that behaviour with Harry. But he was also already obsessed with dark arts. He was always going to become a Death Eater. He was already following like Lucius and his crew, and he was known for that kind of fascination with dark arts. So it's no surprise that he ended up following Voldemort. I mean, even his like love of Lily didn't stop him from pursuing that dark path.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I feel like maybe I could get round to it. I don't know that I would be friends with them. Maybe it's more my Gryffindorness, though. I don't know that I'd be able to join an existing gang. I feel like I'd maybe need to form my own rival one and not be able to join in with Marauders. But you are right. I suppose they kind of grow and change, and maybe I am just really talking Sirius and James here. I think they're the ones that I can see might rub up against like another fellow Gryffindor in a way that I couldn't be friends. But you're right, Lupin is probably the more accessible one. You know, you can forgive him a bit more. Although again, even as an adult, kind of immature tendencies. Like Harry has to remind him as an adult man when he's just 17 himself that no, you can't abandon your newborn child and go on an adventure just because you want to. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I get it with the coming from as a Gryffindor of myself as well, because like I really don't like how they let down our house. But I will say this about Sirius, not to excuse, well, he is reckless, but he is suffering somewhat from arrested development. He was like 21 or something when he was sent to Azkaban, which is like a formative time of your life. And when he's released, he's kind of making up for lost time. So there is that arrogant and reckless streak in Sirius, which was never probably quite ironed out. But ultimately, he was good and he did the right things and he fought dark wizards and he did what was right more than what was easy.
Absolutely. I think that's the way to think about it. Teenage Marauders, not so much, but they got there in the end.
Yeah.
Great, so we know how the Marauders met and became friends, though seeing as these characters weren't black and white, they were sure to have a few skeletons in the closet.
Yeah, I can definitely think of one furry little problem that one Marauder wanted to keep secret.
That furry little problem was actually a rather large problem, a wolf-sized problem with a deadly bite.
Werewolves?
Remus Lupin was a werewolf.
That was all thanks to the ever-repulsive Fenrir Greyback, who bit Remus just before his 5th birthday. He had a grudge against Lupin's father, Lyle.
Being bitten at any age, but especially such a young age, would have had such a devastating effect on Lupin. Werewolves were outcasts in the wizarding community who lived on the fringes of society.
And Remus was no different. He was a lonely boy who spent his childhood moving from house to house with his family. He was also discouraged from having friends.
It's lucky that Albus Dumbledore came to the rescue, he stepped in when he did, and he was the one to invite Remus to Hogwarts.
First, I'm pleased to welcome Professor R.J. Lupin, who's kindly consented to fill the post of Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Good luck, Professor.
Finally, he had a chance to belong.
And we know he did find his place, he found his people, but the downside of making such good friends is that they tend to notice if you disappear every month at the full moon.
Even a rat like Pettigrew would have noticed that pattern.
What I love is that when the rest of the Marauders found out and they discovered Remus's furry little problem, they didn't abandon him like he feared, they actually stuck with him.
No, they didn't. Actually, it was James Potter that started referring to Remus's condition as his furry little problem, leading many to believe that Lupin was the owner of a badly behaved rabbit.
Classic James. But yes, while they supported him with their typical good humour, they actually also went further, leading to one of their most impressive feats of magic. Okay, I feel like after reminding myself of that amazing thing that they did for Remus, you kind of have to eat my words a bit about their immaturity. Because yes, I still think, they were immature, they did some bad things, but actually, supporting a werewolf, not kind of leaning into the prejudice of like the Wizarding World, and which many would, and going against the grain in that way, actually shows like a real depth and kind of, dare I say it, a maturity.
Yeah, well, this is exactly what I was saying. They are, at heart, good people. The fact that they kind of took Remus in, they didn't judge him when there would have been so much pressure to shun him. I mean, in the wizarding community, werewolves were literally pushed to the fringes of society, and so that led to the rise of horrible creatures like Fenrir Greyback, partly through rage and anger. But they treated Remus no differently. In fact, they actually helped him, which is, like you said, showing signs of maturity.
Yeah, I guess it's like a Gryffindor sense of maturity. It's lacking in some spaces, showing off and things like that. But, when it matters, I think they showed their true Gryffindor heart.
Definitely. So, how do you manage to spend time with a werewolf without getting bitten?
Well, it isn't easy, but it is possible and involves some rather complicated magic.
Okay, here's where we're at. Remus's friends realised he was a werewolf and that they would never be safe around him during the full moon, if they remained in their human form.
Yes, and that's the most important part. They weren't safe in their human form, but they would be safer if they took on an animal one.
To do that, the group mastered the art of animagi, and that's no easy task. It involves seriously complex magic that only the most talented witches and wizards dare to try.
Before we get ahead of ourselves, a quick explainer of what an animagus is. That's someone with the ability to transform themselves into an animal at will, whilst maintaining most of their ability to think like a human. And Annie is right, the process of becoming one is long, time-consuming, and difficult. And it's actually kind of weird.
Yep, and we'll get to that in a second. There's also the problem that when it goes wrong, it goes very wrong. And those mistakes normally take the form of half human, half animal mutations with no cure. Kinda like if Victor Crumb had that shark head all the time.
Which would be a devastating tragedy. Anyway, so the process of actually becoming an animagus is really wild, especially when you take a closer look at the individual steps that are involved. Firstly, there's the fact that they had to keep a mandrake leaf in their mouth for a month. And if they accidentally ate it, or if it fell out of their mouth, they'd have to start the whole thing over again.
It doesn't even end there. After that, they have to collect dew from a place where neither sunlight or human feet have touched, and wait for an electrical storm to complete the process, which can take years.
Which is just fully insane. It's very Snips and Snails and Puppy Dog Tales vibes, isn't it?
It just sounds really stressful, and that's not all of the steps, but nonetheless they all did it, and that meant they could keep Lupin company in their new animal forms, and roam the outskirts of the castle. Incidentally, it's thought that no other students managed to explore Hogwarts quite as thoroughly as they did, not even Fred and George Weasley.
What they did with the knowledge that they gathered from their midnight wanderings is even more impressive. They created the Marauders map.
Another example of a beautifully advanced bit of magic. To create it, they had to use something called the homunculus charm, which allowed whoever had the map to track the movements of every person at Hogwarts. In a fun twist, it was also enchanted to forever repel their nemesis Severus Snape, in the most insulting way possible, of course.
Messrs. Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot and Prongs offer their compliments to Professor Snape and
Go on.
request that he keep his abnormally large nose out of other people's business.
Why, you insolent little...
Professor.
Of course they enchanted it to insult Snape. Obviously, such a naughty map eventually got confiscated from the boys, but it eventually found its way into the hands of its natural, mischievous successors, the Weasley twins, and then of course to Harry.
Don't forget, when you're done, just to give it a tap and say, Mischief Managed. Otherwise anyone can read it.
Right, I have to stop you there. That is like seriously advanced magic and just crazy for Hogwarts students to go through. I mean, we've spoken about their immaturity and maybe they weren't mature enough for their age, but my God, they were clever enough for their age, like beyond their years. dare I say it, cleverer than Hermione?
Yeah, and I'm going to stop you there. Nobody is cleverer than my girl Hermione. No. Yeah, that was a very advanced bit of magic, and it was very clever, and you know, credit to them. But I mean, let's forget Pettigrew; he was just there. But they went through the process of creating the Marauders map as a team, as a group. Hermione, and no shade to Harry and Ron, they're brilliant in their own ways. She was the brains of the operation. She did this all by herself.
You know, whenever backup.
Exactly. When there was like a scheme or a plan, it was, if there was any complex magic, it was Hermione that was there, and it was Hermione doing it on her own.
Yeah, she couldn't exactly bounce off Harry and Ron and work out a good, clever piece of magic. She just had to provide it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, also, I guess Hermione was kind of held back by her own kind of adherence to the rules in the way that the Marauders weren't. They probably pushed the boundaries of magic in ways that Hermione maybe she could do because she was clever enough, but she just wouldn't because rules.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that to a degree, but then you've got to remember that Hermione had a ruthless streak. Like, let's think about the Protean charm. That was very advanced Newt level magic. And again, she did that off her own back. And then also, let's not forget that when she was in her second year at Hogwarts, she successfully brewed a polyjuice potion. And obviously when she took it, it went wrong, but that wasn't to do with the potion, that was to do with the hair that she used. But she was a second year, she created a successful polyjuice potion. They were much older by the time that they became Animagi. So for me, Marauders clever, props to them, but
she's cleverer.
Don't come for Hermione.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, she made a polyjuice potion, but she couldn't take it. She ended up a cat, but she made it successfully. It's interesting you bring up the Protean charm. Yeah, that's Newt level, and she's only in her 5th year at the time. Do we think the Protean charm's more complicated than the homunculus charm, which the Marauders performed for the map? Like, that's a good way to charm for charm measure there. Yeah,
I'm not sure which one you would class as more complex, but again, it comes back to my point. Group of Marauders working on that. Hermione doing it solo.
Yeah, just turning up to DA meetings with the charm ready to go.
And that actually speaks to the rule thing as well. She didn't like to break the rules, except for when it served her purposes, or it absolutely had to.
Or it had a greater good.
Exactly, or a greater good.
Yeah.
And that's when she unleashed her ruthless streak. Let's not forget Rita Skeeter.
Exactly. I mean, however clever the Marauders were, I can't help but think about the future again. They became Animagus, which was great and for a great reason, but it did kind of allow Peter to do everything that he ended up doing and get back to Voldemort. So again, ramifications into adulthood.
Oh yeah, definitely. If Peter hadn't become an Animagus, who knows what would have happened. I don't know about you, but I think I smell a rat.
It's not just you, I think it's time we discuss that particular rodent. So, the 4 Marauders appeared to be a group with an unbreakable bond. But there was one weak link, Peter Pettigrew.
I think it's safe to say that Peter was a coward with a habit of latching on to the most powerful person in the room.
Yes, exactly. At school, that was just James and Sirius. In adulthood, however, that was Lord Voldemort.
At school, this sort of behaviour just made Wormtail look like a bit of a pushover or a sheep. But when Voldemort got involved, that compliant attitude turned into something far more sinister.
Yes, exactly. Like the way he betrayed James and Lily when news of a prophecy came to light and they had to go into hiding because Voldemort was after them.
He really had them all fooled. It was actually on Sirius's advice that they chose Peter Pettigrew as their secret keeper. After all, who would suspect that such an unassuming, meek man would know the location of the Potter family?
He was their friend, and he betrayed them. He was their friend!
The rat that he was, Pettigrew went straight to Voldemort, and we all know the tragic events that unfolded next.
Why was Peter even placed into Gryffindor? He didn't exactly scream chivalrous, did he? If anything, his cunning and knack for self-preservation seemed way more suitable for Slytherin.
I ask myself the same thing. The Sorting Hat did struggle with this decision though. It took over 5 minutes to decide where Peter should be placed, making him a hat stall. The hat kept swaying between Gryffindor and Slytherin, though it still maintains that it made the right choice.
Yeah, the Hat believes that Peter's death by his own hand in the basement of Malfoy Manor proves he was really a Gryffindor. Or maybe the Hat's just really stubborn.
Exactly, and when we say by his own hand, we're being extremely literal here. So basically, when Peter chopped off his own hand in Goblet of Fire, as flesh of the servant needed to be willingly given, he was rewarded with a brand new silver hand, which was pretty cool.
Thank you, Master. Thank you.
Until it turned on him at the last moment.
You see, when Pettigrew went to murder Harry at Malfoy Manor, Harry reminded Pettigrew that he owed him a life debt, causing Peter to hesitate.
And that hesitation cost him his life. Whether it was due to remorse, regret, or a tiny slither of decency is up for debate. However, the hand saw this tiny flicker as an act of weakness and it strangled him.
Not nice. But for the sake of saving the wizarding world, kinda handy.
I mean, yes, a very handy moment indeed. We're talking about this, I guess, final moment of redemption when we talk about Pettigrew, where he suddenly had a quick kind of change of heart and hesitated, and that's what caused his downfall in the end. But is a sudden last-minute change of heart enough to redeem him entirely?
No.
No, I don't think so either.
No, absolutely not. I don't think that he was motivated by bravery in that moment at all. I think he was motivated by fear. Harry had reminded him that he owed him a life debt, and he hesitated. And it wasn't because he had some flicker of redemption. It was because he had a moment of panic.
Yeah, so ultimately he is evil then, I guess.
Exactly, and the Sorting Hat will never admit it. But we really do need to beg the question, did it make a mistake?
Did it make a mistake placing him in Gryffindor? I mean, far be it from me to slander my own house, Gryffindor, and defend Slytherins, but I mean, not all Slytherins are evil, not all Gryffindors are good. You can be evil from Gryffindor, you can be from Slytherin and good. So I guess when it comes to his evilness and did he redeem himself, I'm absolutely sure, but when it comes to his house, I don't know that that makes a point.
Yeah, well, see, you've made a really good point. It's not about good and evil, and this is what I want to make really clear. It's about your personality traits, and Gryffindor is about bravery. And I don't think that Pettigrew demonstrated any bravery. He did have a really good knack for self-preservation, which is an example of cunning. And again, that doesn't necessarily make you bad. Like one of the greatest wizards of all time, Merlin, Slytherin, ambitious, you know, he became one of the greatest wizards of all time. It's less about good and evil, and it's more about which personality traits are the ones that you use to get you through life.
Okay, so yeah, you're right. I mean, that's what the Sorting Hat's looking for. It's not doing these simple questions like, is this child good or are they bad at 11 years old? It's looking for the traits that could factor into those decisions later in life. But ultimately, I think we're agreed, Pettigrew is evil, but that does not make him a Slytherin. What makes him a Slytherin is his cunningness. And so, yeah, I mean, I get why he was a hat store completely. I mean, one thing we definitely agreed on then, he's evil. Should they have just killed him in the Shrieking Shack when they wanted to? I mean, Harry was the one that stopped them.
No, because, you know, as much as it would have been nice to quickly stomp on that rat. But anyway, it would be the easy route. And that's not who they are. They, as, you know, as courageous Gryffindors, they do what is right, not what is easy. And the right thing was to keep him alive for many reasons.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great example of Harry's Gryffindorness shining through. But I always just get stuck on that scene. I mean, Harry explains it by saying, you know, my dad wouldn't want his best friends to be killers and things like that. But also, what about the evidence? This is always maybe my secondary Ravenclaw logic coming in. Like, it was just logical not to kill him. They needed the evidence. They needed to show that he was alive to exonerate Sirius. And yeah, I mean, so yeah, if you killed him, it wouldn't have worked.
Well, exactly, because you just need to look at what happened at the end of Prisoner of Azkaban. I mean, he wasn't killed, but he escaped. Without Pettigrew, there was no evidence that Sirius hadn't betrayed anyone, and Sirius had to go on the run again. So killing him, whilst tempting, not the practical solution, and also, you know, not the morally right one either. No,
a bit of Gryffindor moral compass coming through, a bit of Ravenclaw logic ultimately saved Pettigrew.
Exactly. So you would think that the Marauders' tale was a bit of a downer overall.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly the feel-good buddy movie it started out as, but despite all the tragedies, they made a mark on the Wizarding World and left an interesting legacy. Except you, Peter.
So, the Marauders were far from perfect, yet 3 of them went on to play a huge part in saving the Wizarding World.
Yep, after school they all joined the Order of the Phoenix and fought to save the Wizarding World from the tyranny of Lord Voldemort.
It was the death of the Potters that broke this group apart. Pettigrew's loyalties lay with Voldemort, Sirius was imprisoned after being framed for Peter's murder, and Lupin was devastated and retreated to the fringes of society once again.
But when it was discovered that Pettigrew had faked his death, Sirius and Remus were reunited. This meant that they were able to take care of one of the best legacies any Marauder left behind, James and Lily's son, Harry.
Yeah, and they each looked out for Harry in their own way. Lupin taught him how to defeat Dementors and cast a Patronus. More importantly, he showed Harry how to face his fears and find light in the darkness, even when it didn't seem possible.
And Sirius was deadly serious about his role as Godfather. He protected Harry, guided him, and fought alongside him, battling dark forces together until his death.
It is so sad that all the Marauders had died by the time the stories came to an end, but they never truly left Harry.
No, they definitely didn't. In fact, during the Battle of Hogwarts, Harry used the Resurrection Stone to see his parents again, to see Lupin and Sirius one final time. I think their love helped to give him the final burst of courage he needed to face his own death.
You could say that Harry would never have defeated Voldemort without their support.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, for a group that started out as a morally grey bunch of teenagers, they got a lot done.
Well, they proved the world is not black and white, or in the words of Sirius Black and my tattoo, split into good people and Death Eaters.
Exactly, good people can do bad things and there is always hope for redemption.
I think the Marauders left behind a positive legacy on the whole. One of courage, integrity, love, and...
being a bit messy?
Exactly.
I feel sure we'll meet again sometime. Until then, mischief managed.
So there you have it. Did we broaden your mind with our talk topics today?
Remember, you can join us on our Harry Potter social channels across Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram to join in the discussion, or drop us a comment below.
And for more Wizarding World news as quickly as our owls can deliver it, visit the official Harry Potter website where you can sign up, discover your Hogwarts house, or simply just geek out with us on some of your favourite Harry Potter moments.
We'll see you next time, but for now, Mischief Managed.